Do you agree?
I made some improvements in some areas I wanted to. Most importantly, trying to take care of the ball and keep it out of harm's way as much as I possibly can. Obviously, end up with that one interception that still eats up at us and obviously changes the momentum of the game. But for the most part, I do feel as if I'm still making progress towards where I want to be.
How hard is it? I'm sorry. You're a playmaker. You're out there. You're trying to make plays. How hard is it then not to force things when the objective is to get chunk plays and move the ball down?
That's the name of this league. That's the name of the game here. It's not about taking every play and making it a touchdown. And as a playmaker and as a guy who has always had the ball in his hand, I always do want to make those big plays. But it's more about understanding how to string together a bunch of small plays that does eventually become a big momentum changing force. But at the same time, you got to also understand that you do have to take shots, and those chunk plays are needed. So you got to be able to be patient when you need to, and understand the opportunities based upon the defensive looks when it is time to take shots.
I know you said your confidence is as high as ever. I'm just curious, how much attention do you pay to stats, and how do you deal with them when you're near the bottom of the league?
Yeah, when you're 0-4 and statistically one of the worst quarterbacks out there right now, you got to figure out where you're headed. What's the path right now? What's the message? And for me, it's about doing whatever I can to grow, and whatever coach decides needs to be the right room for growth for that week. In the last couple of weeks, we're talking about trying not to hold on to the ball and make sure that we're throwing the ball away and not taking sacks. Well, we made progress on that. This week, it's about putting the ball in playmakers' hands and trying to go score points so we can go win a game. Now it's up to me to do whatever I can this week to grow in that. Obviously, this is going to be a process. Rome wasn't built in a day, and I'm looking forward to attacking this consistently and taking on those small projects until it becomes something that we really want it to be.
Some people would say these are the times where a veteran quarterback could be really helpful to a rookie quarterback. And although Kessler was in the league last year, we know that. Do you at all feel lonely in that regard? That there's a shoulder to not cry on, but to lean on?
Yeah, but it would be valuable to have a guy who's been through this and understands it all. But when you have a quarterback's coach and Coach Jackson, essentially I already have that. The conversations that we have are more at a personal level, where we can share thoughts and create dialogue. It's not just coach talking down to players. So that relationship in itself is something that I've used as a mentor tool. But I'll go elsewhere. I have some good relationships with guys who played in this league outside of this locker room, and I try to use them as much as I possibly can.
Guys in the league?
Who have played before, yes.
We talked to Josh McCown yesterday. He said something you just kind of touched on a minute ago. It's really key for a young quarterback. He was speaking about you, but rebuilding situation to not feel so attached to everything and not to be weighed down by the record, but to really kind of focus on personal growth. How difficult is that, Joe, when you are the leader of the team and that record is by your name?
Well, that has to be done in the quiet hours. The personal growth has to be done on my own, outside of this. Evaluating myself day to day and looking at the whole situation from an outsider's point of view. That's where you make your own personal growth. And here it's about doing whatever we can to win games, and that's about the stuff that happens out on the field, the development that I need to continue to have in order to be a good enough quarterback to win games in this league. Yes, this goes back to having a young guy who would like to have time to grow, but when they decided to bring me here and decided to name me the starting quarterback, that whole timeline shrunk, and it is what it is, and we got to just go with it and do whatever we can to continue to head on the same path that we've been heading on.
Is there anything outside of football for you right now, as far as when you talk about every year you're talking to maybe other quarterbacks that played in the league, working with you? Is there anything just kind of get away or just talk to people about?
Sometimes I watch a half of an episode of a Netflix or something, but typically there's not much time. A lot of our time is spent here. It comes with the job. This is my dream job, and I'm fully committed and I'm falling in love with it. So I spend a lot of my time here, and when it's time to move myself away from football, typically it's something that, outside of exactly throwing the football or maybe the scheme, but still within the same realm of football that's going to take my mind elsewhere.
Who are some of the veterans in the league that are either in the league now or have played in the league that you're relying on for that kind of
I like to keep my support team pretty close to me.
Sean, reading the safety is such a key element to quarterbacking. The Jets have 2 rookie safeties. Do you see vulnerability there, or what do you see in the 2 safeties?
They're talented. I mean, they're as good as it comes. Obviously, they're young and they're still learning just like I am, but when you have 2 guys who are as talented, both tackling and covering, you got to treat them as if they're the guys that you've been playing against for the last 4 weeks. But at the same time, when they want to play their safeties low and when they want to, be the run-filling team that they've always been, you do have to pick and choose times to attack those through different schemes and route combinations, and also through time and situation in the game where you know that they're going to be flying up and it's time to put one over the top.
Is that the first thing you do approaching leaving the huddle?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the first step you take is to identify the safeties pre-snap. You go through the rest of your things, and then as soon as that ball's snapped, you find them again and figure out where they went.
Specifically about Adams, what makes him a special player and a challenge?
He hits like a linebacker. He's as fast as a corner. He has all the it factors to be a good safety in this league, and he's been able to show it in the first 4 games, and his transition from college to the NFL obviously was seamless. So it's on us to make sure now that we find out where he is each play and make sure that we keep the ball out of his way.
What's it like it seems like every week, I know it's a next man up mentality here, but it's like every week you're getting a new wide receiver, someone coming in, you guys are signing somebody, you sign another guy this week. How difficult is that for you as far as trying to establish chemistry with some of these guys?
It's definitely a new concept for me. I've always been taught that the team that you step into the locker room, up until NFL, the team that you step into the locker room with on day one is typically the team you leave with. But now to be in the NFL and have the rotation of guys, it just brings a new complexity to the game. And that's that we got to go out and we have to work that much harder during the week to make sure that we're developing and creating chemistry. Typically you get to week 4, 5, and 6 and you know exactly how every guy runs every route. Well, here we got to make sure that every week that we step out in that practice field that we're focusing in on the details so that we can by Sunday have the chemistry needed to have success when we're throwing the ball.
Have you always been a guy that knows all your stats?
No. When you can evaluate the game in so many different ways, and I think Joe came up here and said something about stats in itself too. Sometimes those stats tell a different story than what's actually happening. And for the situation I'm in right now in terms of my growth and my development, I know that there's specific things that I look for each week, and I want to attack those. And sometimes the stats might lean you away from the things that we are actually growing at.
The one constant you've had, although he lines up a lot, is Duke. What has he been like for you as far as, I don't want to say a safety net, but you seem like he's a guy you've been able to rely on, either as a running back or catching balls outside or out of the backfield?
He's a playmaker. That's in this league. It's all about trying to find matchups. It's mano a mano here. When you have 11 defenders on the other side of the ball who are all very talented, it's up to us to make sure that we create the best mismatches we possibly can. And Duke is simply that. He's a running back. He can run the ball downhill. He can give you all the force you needed, but he also can catch the ball out of the backfield and do whatever you ask him to do from there. So it's on us to make sure that, myself, to make sure that when there is an opportunity for him to be matched up with a safety or a linebacker and sometimes a corner, if whenever he can get into a position where he can make something happen, the ball has to be in his hands so he can go make a play with it.
Hey, DeShone, I know you visited with the Indians a couple weeks ago. What was that experience like, and how do you like their chances in the postseason?
They're awesome. They're awesome. Obviously a completely different sport, but the camaraderie that they have within that locker room, which is a little different from what we have here, is amazing. They find a way of resetting themselves each week in each game to step back out there and have success, and I'm looking forward to being in Cleveland as they go on another great run.
You're a baseball guy. We're talking about trying to get a few minutes here or there outside of it. You don't watch the playoffs?
Typically my understanding of the game comes from whatever Twitter tells me. There's not much time to sit down and watch a 17-hour baseball game, so we can sum it up. We can sum it up in a quick Twitter stream.
Mine too.